Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalists of Arlington.
We choose.
We choose.
We choose to be
A liberal religious community.
Welcoming.
Welcoming to all.
We encourage each other
on our spiritual journeys.
Support one another
through the changes in our lives.
And challenge the excesses
and injustices of our time.
Called to love.
To love.
To love.
And upheld by joy.
We live our faith.
Relax your spine and your legs, unclasp your hands, and become aware of your skin and your breath. Open yourself to this room with all of us, sharing this moment and this air, and feel the energy. Spirit of Life this week brought so much weather. Clouds and snow and wind and sun. And every time we look up, and when we look to the sky, we're aware of the canopy that hangs over us all. The expansive blue, the stars piercing the black, the darkening storm clouds. We all share that sky and this ground, and today we share this breath and this rhythm of our hearts. We are so tightly bound by the tenderness of simply being alive. This week also brought the spectacle of the fracturing of our community once again, the deliberate shattering of our bonds to tear what binds us together, to isolate us from each other and keep us afraid, inside and away from the sky. Our sky was ripped by our government's planes raining down bombs on Iran, and we watch as the escalation and retaliation ramp up. On our own land, parents and children continue to be grabbed out of cars and terrorized. Trans people have been stripped of rights to drive and vote and exist. Every assault damages our collective well-being, contracts our world to walls and darkness. So I invite you to be still and present with the spirit that brings light and that allows us to share song and laughter and food and love. And as we recommit to love above all else, the steely, unyielding, overwhelming love that has the power to light our world and animate life, let us overcome the hate and the cruelty and the denial of our commonality. I invite you to open yourself to the sky and to let love bloom in yourself, in our community, and in our country. Let us take a few more deep cleansing breaths together for 2 minutes of prayer.
Let us hear this short reflection on covenant by my colleague in Colorado, the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Covenant is one of those words that can initially sound kind of stuffy, academic, and out of date. But when you unpack its meaning and its practices, covenant holds a whole vision for how to live in this complicated, beautiful, and broken world. It is a vision that says we are most human when we bind ourselves in relationship. But not just any relationship, relationships of trust, mutual accountability, and continual return. This is not what our culture teaches us. Our culture teaches us that what it means to be human is to be an individual, self-defined, self-determined, separate even. But our UU covenantal theology affirms that being human comes down to the commitments we make to and with each other, the relationships we keep. We become human through our promises to and with each other. Let me tell you right now, sometime in the next year, maybe in the next few minutes, the people you most believe in and care about are going to disappoint you. Your church is going to disappoint you. This world is surely going to disappoint you. Can I get an amen on that? Amen. Like all the time, she says. We are all walking wounded and weary from the way this world can and does break our hearts. And what our faith asks of us, what our faith imagines for us, is that somehow, right at that moment when our hearts break, we will find our way to see through that heartbreak. We will stay put, not close off, not run away, not hurt back, but keep on being in relationship, doing what we can to repair the world and each other. Keep on opening our hearts with greater love. And right then, our covenantal faith says, we will feel not only most human, but also most whole and most at home. Well, unlike Reverend Gretchen, I had a more shallow idea about covenant. And my idea of covenant came from the Indiana Jones trilogy. Remember the first one? Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Indiana Jones was in pursuit of the Ark of the Covenant. And this Ark contained therein the original stone tablets that Charlton Heston brought down from Mount Sinai, right? Oh, I'm sorry, that was Moses, wasn't it? I was such in awe of the meaning of that covenant and why people throughout the ages wanted to pursue it and the symbolic significance of such a relic. And when I got to seminary, I found out there was a lot more to it than that covenant, right? And the Ark of the Covenant. And that's when I found out that really the symbol of a covenant should be that rainbow that God put in the sky after the world was flooded. Now, Noah's Ark, so this is the other Ark, right? We had the Ark of the Covenant, now we have Noah's Ark, was a story about how the world screwed up big time and did not follow those 10 commandments. And so as a punishment, God smote God's people, well, the ones who disobeyed God's commandments anyway. Noah and his family were spared, right? But the rest of the world drowned because of that great flood. And it made me think, is that the consequence of being out of covenant? Is that the whole world gets to suffer and the majority of the world becomes extinct, basically, right? So it made me think about, are there other consequences to the violation and a breach of covenant? Because that seems a little severe to me. And not to mention that it is actually not in alignment with my theology. I don't believe that a supernatural being controls weather like that, or is into this whole reward and punishment system to strike down the entire world just because they broke a bunch of rules and commandments. So what's another Unitarian Universalist way of looking at covenant? That's when I thought, well, given the fact that we are a promise-making, promise-breaking, and promise remaking kind of people, and that's just the nature of what it means to be human, what if we saw this as the Ark of a Covenant? ARC, get it? Well, one of you got it. I'll give you time for the rest of you to get it. What does the Ark of a Covenant look like in Unitarian Universalism? Well, first of all, we still need to figure out what kind of promises we're making with one another. And that, of course, involves a who. Because in my mind, yeah, you can make a covenant with yourself all day long, but a covenant is between at least two people. And again, in my mind, what distinguishes that from any other agreement out there? We could sign a contract with another person, or we could come up with a bunch of guidelines and laws and regulations. But what makes a covenant so unique? In my mind, it involves a third party. And again, in the Hebrew Bible, that third party was God. But in our day and age, we could, given our various and diverse theologies, we could say that this covenant is with higher power or the universe or spirit of life, right? But whatever it is there a third party to bear witness to this covenant that would give it a greater sense of gravitas other than just a pinky swear moment that you're making with your friend or with another human being? So the question of who we're making a covenant with also brings up the question of whose are we? Who do we belong to? And to who are we accountable to? So the next part of this promise-making part of the covenant has to do, in my mind, with what are the terms of the covenant. And again, in the Hebrew Bible, it talks about these commandments that were handed down, right? It was a very top-down kind of process. And again, we all know how well top-down processes work in Unitarian Universalist congregations, right? And so I thought to myself, and is the what just about a set of beliefs, for example? And again, back in 325 of the Common Era, a council was put together to come up with a set of beliefs and doctrine and dogma about what the church is supposed to follow and believe and recite every single Sunday. And again, we Unitarian Universalists have kind of steered away from that. So what is our covenant based on? I love what Conrad Wright talked about, and he said that it's about walking together and journeying together. It's about being with one another through thick and thin. That's what membership is about. It's not just about signing the book. It's not just about signing the dotted line or having a contribution on record each year. It's about making that commitment to be there for each other, especially during the most difficult of moments. Sounds like a wedding vow, doesn't it? Through thickness and thin, through sickness and in health, till death do us part, right? So, in my mind, those are the elements of a covenant, and yet, as we know again, we are also a promise-breaking kind of people. Because if it were not so, the Hebrew Bible would be just one thin pamphlet, right? But as we witnessed, the people of Israel broke God's covenant over and over and over again. And we as human beings, even here today, as Gretchen pointed out, maybe the next minute, we are going to disappoint someone. We are going to act in a way in which would harm another human being. Or we may forget that we made that covenant and that promise with someone else to begin with. And so the bigger question is the next part of this, which is how do we get back into right relationship? How do we remake that covenant, and how do we hold ourselves mutually accountable? There are many different types of covenants. The one that I've already come up with and had a covenant with is with Marta, your minister emerita, and your previous settled minister. I also have a covenant with staff, right, that we refreshed this past fall. And I have a covenant with our UUA. I have a covenant with Parcom. I have a covenant with the transition team. So many covenants. And all of this has been compiled together into a Google Doc, which will eventually be up on our website. Yeah, I have a covenant with the clergy in this congregation as well. So multiple covenants. So that's one form of covenant that we have. The second form of covenant that many congregations have, but not yet for this one, is a covenant of right relations, or it's also known as a behavioral covenant. how are we to behave and act with one another that would ensure the health and vitality of our congregation. And I am so happy to announce that I have cajoled and arm-twisted Tina Schultz to head up this covenanting process. Yay! So, thank you for saying yes, Tina. So for the next few months, we're going to be journeying and even wordsmithing, which we use love to do, right? Around what our covenant of right relations is going to look like. So stay tuned for that. And the other type of covenant, which I'll be focusing on for the rest of my sermon today, is how to view our financial giving and stewardship as a covenant. And so in order to unpack that a little further, I want to bring up a biologist that you may have heard of. Her name is Robin Wall Kimmerer. How many of you are fangirls like myself? Well, you'll be pleased to know that next Sunday at 5 p.m., she'll be giving a talk at Wellesley College. And thanks to Mass Audubon, it'll be live streamed so that you could tune into that for free. Anyway, she's a member of the Potawatomi tribe, and also wrote a fabulous book called Braiding Sweetgrass. How many of you have read that book? Oh, all right, quite a few of you. And in that book, there's a chapter called The Gift of Strawberries. Now, I must say, strawberries ranks up there as one of my favorite fruits. And so I was thrilled when she wrote a whole chapter about strawberries. And those of you who have read it might recall that she went into detail about the taste of those small wild strawberries and how succulent and sweet it is. Like the ones you buy from the store, just pale in comparison. As she was describing it, I don't know if this happened to you or not as well, but I was literally like salivating. I'm like, oh, where can I possibly get those sweet wild strawberries that Robin was describing in her book? And the other part that made me super envious was her talking about how when she was growing up, she was able to pick those wild strawberries for free. Can you imagine that? That there was no cost for her to go out and just pick those wild berries, because guess what? According to her, and according to the gift economy that she describes, nature gave us those wild strawberries for free. And so they're just meant for us to enjoy and to savor and to just get so much pleasure out of eating those wild strawberries. So what got in the way? What put a kibosh on this gift economy? Robin describes it as the market economy. That somehow we humans commoditize everything and try to monetize everything, including nature, into a buying and selling kind of environment, right? That we need to put a fence around these wild strawberries so that we could label it as private property. And anybody who crosses that private property could be accused of trespassing and also, in some cases, probably be shot, right? So we have all these constraints around what nature has actually given us. And it made me think about our covenant, because really the original covenant goes way back to the time each and every single one of us were born. When we were born, we made a covenant with nature, and she made a covenant with us to take care of us, to give us food, to bring us joy, to bring us life, right? And the question is, how have we reciprocated in that covenantal process? Again, we've somehow figured out ways to commoditize water, for example. Anybody ever heard of the situation in Flint, Michigan a few years ago, right? That somehow bottling up water as a resource is more important than making it available for the community at large. So, and have you heard about what we've done to our environment and how we repaid nature? Forget about a supernatural being wreaking havoc and destroying the world with natural disasters and catastrophe. We humans could do a good enough job on our own, thank you very much, by releasing carbon dioxide into our environment, by polluting our waters and our rivers. We have done a not so good job at lifting up our end of the bargain and our end of the covenant, have we? And so the question becomes, how do we get back into right relationship with nature? And Robin suggests something that she called an honorable harvest. Those of you who have read the book, remember that term? Just nod and pretend like you did, because I'm about to tell you as well, or summarize what she said anyway. An honorable harvest consists of three parts. One is to get permission. The second is to take what you need. And the third is to leave the rest for others who may need it more than you do, right? So it sounds pretty simple, right? And I thought to myself again, how does this concept apply to our notion about stewardship and how we're to handle our finances here at First Parish? So for the next few months, the transition team is going to harvest information and thoughts from you all in terms of getting a sense of who this congregation is and where we want to go. And in the future months, the Settled Minister Search Committee will also be engaging in this harvesting process. So how do we make this harvest an honorable one? When it comes to getting permission, again, what if we were to go with a sociocratic consent decision-making process? I know that sounds like quite a mouthful, but rather than a top-down kind of decision, what if this were to be a grassroots and bottom-up way to ask you all some of the more difficult questions that this congregation is grappling with around what it means to be a congregation of this size and what staffing configuration would look like moving forward? These are all very big questions, and we will be engaging with you on how to come up with an opportunity to also figure out the second part of this, which is, what are our needs? So there will be a needs assessment opportunity moving forward. And then again, lastly, this whole part about take what you need and leave the rest for someone else, right? And this is what I want to hone in on during our stewardship month, because there's this whole question about what an ethic of reciprocity actually means. Does it mean that it's always going to be a 50-50 kind of endeavor? Or as Joel was saying before, does it mean that everybody needs to be pledging at the 3,000 range? Or does it mean something else? Because here's what the reality is in terms of who makes up this congregation. Some of you are gainfully employed. And some of you, with your gainful employment, are making a decent amount of money. And others of you are retired and you're on a fixed income. And yet others are unemployed or underemployed. And as we know, within this past year, employment has become a very uncertain proposition, especially if you're in the research field or the academic field, or if you work for the government, right? So we recognize that everyone is at a different place financially. And so rather than the focus being on that, the focus then becomes on what does an ethic of reciprocity look like in this environment? And if you're, again, gainfully employed, and if you could afford it, perhaps consider upping your pledge a little bit more to take care of the ones that are in a more uncertain place. And if you have never, ever pledged to this congregation before, and that describes actually about 10 or 20% of our members, I would like you to consider perhaps giving up on your cup of Dunkin' Donuts once or twice a month even, and channeling some of that you would spend on DD to First Parish instead. How would that feel? You know, maybe like the kids were saying, good, right? Because you'll be surprised at how, when we give, how much more we get back in return. And at the end of the day, I don't want to get into dollars and cents, because for me, that's not what pledging is about. It is about, like Joel was saying, the theme of this year's stewardship campaign is upholding what matters. And again, we've been asking you those questions the past couple of weeks during these common ground discussions that we've been having. And time again, you've been telling us that during these uncertain times, we need one another more than ever. Again, going back to the definition of covenant, we need to be journeying together now more than ever. So what if all of us could double down on our pledge and our commitment to live into our covenant? How would that change and rock our world? I'm just going to end by saying this is my altar call moment for you all. This is not the come to Jesus, but the come to Channing Ballou moment, right? Of asking you to search your heart and to find out what is it about this First Parish community that brings you so much joy. Is it about the connection? Is it about our core values? Is it about our covenant with one another? Because at the end of the day, we belong to each other and we belong to life. Amen.